Hello. Welcome to Rise and Bust. In today's episode, we will see another rise and bust story. We will analyze how it rose to glitter success, and then we will understand the mistakes that led to its downfall. And just to let you know, we post well-analyzed and real rise and fall stories. Stories of companies and people that once ruled the world, but then busted for small mistakes or series of mistakes. If you are interested in similar stories, then do not forget to hit the subscribe button. Now relax and enjoy the story and let us know in the comments what you learned today.
Nowadays, people associate companies like Apple, Amazon, and Microsoft with the future of the tech industry. But, 50 years ago, when Apple was still in its infancy, and Mark Zuckerberg hadn't been born yet, IBM was the leading name in technology. This company earned the reputation of being the go-to company for innovation. More specifically, IBM was a trailblazer in the data processing field, with their technology revolutionizing how massive corporations and the US administration process and make sense of colossal data quantities. Chapter 1. The Beginnings. IBM traces its roots to the Computing Tabulation Recording Company, CTR, established in 1911. It might sound a bit peculiar, but IBM's digital revolution was initially grounded on paper. The firm's origin can be traced back to Herman Hollerith's punch card tabulating machine, created in 1896 and used across Britain, France, the US, and Russia. This statistician created a tabulating system that incorporated a card and a punch that would make holes in the card at designated places to signify census information. It also had a tabulator embedded, which could sense the holes and count the data on the card, and a sorter to help sort the card for later use. A wire was inserted through the holes into a container of mercury beneath for the electrical circuits to be closed and the appropriate data tabulated. Technically, using only holes punched in a card, Hollerith's product could hold all an individual's personal information, including name, hometown, job, and many others. Millions of cards could now be sorted, and the population of different cities could be counted. This invention predated our electronic computers. This was indeed a significant accomplishment during that period. Charles Flint bought Hollerith's business in 1911 for $2.3 million. He was the one who combined Hollerith's tabulating machine company with two other companies to form the Computing Tabulating Recording Company, CTR. The company employed approximately 1,300 people and produced a variety of products, including things like meal slicers, coffee grinders, and of course, punch cards. Flint hoped that by joining these three different businesses, he would provide diversification and stability for when more challenging times come. Chapter 2. Success and Significant Achievements. Not so long after, Flint employed Thomas Watson, who was better suited to lead the company and subsequently turned into its leader. He created his well-known slogan, "Think," for the growing organization and created a whole information industry from the tabulating machine business. In 1911, the company earned an astonishing $800,000 in net income. By 1924, he had expanded the market overseas and altered the enterprise's name to International Business Machines, IBM, to illustrate the organization's widened range of products. IBM manufactured calculators throughout the 1930s, utilizing the same technology they used in their punch card processing machines. By the 1940s, IBM had begun to progress into computing by creating an electromechanical computer, the Mark I. This was the first device to automatically compute long equations, even though its calculations were time-consuming. It was composed of 765,000 components, which, when linked together, formed 78 adding machines. The Mark I was supplied with paper tape as its input and typewriters for its output. Admiral Grace Hopper described the sound of the Mark I as being akin to that of 1,000 knitting needles. What's interesting about the Mark I is that the Navy used it to calculate the gun trajectory. John von Neumann also utilized the computer to assess if implosion could be used to trigger the first atomic bombs. Gaining familiarity through the construction of the Mark I enabled IBM to create its computers subsequently. On April 29, 1952, they unveiled the IBM 701, the initial commercial, scientific computer to use vacuum tubes. The 701 featured hardware with a binary fixed-point single address, an electrostatic storage tube memory, and a magnetic tape for data storage. This computer influenced the creation of a specific programming language. The Fortran programming language was created in 1954 and released in 1957 by IBM. Fortran, also known as formula translation, decreased the lengthy programming process and was accessible to anyone. In the past, programming was executed in machine or assembly languages, which required the programmer to write instructions in binary or hexadecimal arithmetic. This company wanted to invent a less complicated, more user-friendly way to interact with computers. Then they proceeded to work on and complete a 3-year project, creating a language that combined algebraic equations and a shorthand version of English. During the late 1950s, Fortran became the go-to programming language because it made it possible to write programs that performed just as well as hand-coded. Around the same time, another invention by IBM shook the tech world. Due to the increasing reliance of businesses on these computers, the processing of tall stacks of punched cards or the sequential reading of data from magnetic tapes became more difficult. IBM identified an opportunity in the market for a storage device that could access data quickly and in any order. And thus, the 350 RAMAC magnetic disk drive was introduced in 1956. It was quicker than any existing technology and allowed computers to utilize their processing power effectively. It was able to do this by providing cost-effective and large-capacity storage. The introduction of the first disk drive gave birth to an entire industry that has been essential to the future success of computers. All this was followed by the highly successful IBM 360 series in the 1960s. It is safe to say that IBM System 360 has had one of the most significant technological, societal, and organizational impacts in American history. According to many sources, it is one of the most significant business achievements. This series signaled a turning point in studying complex systems and the developing field of information science. After the release of this new family of 6 computers and its programs, people stopped discussing using computers to automate specific tasks and turned to manage complex processes through computer systems. This altered consumers' perspectives on computer hardware. For the first time, other businesses could start with a modest system and expand it as needed. Other manufacturers discovered they could produce S/360 compatible peripherals. This way, a whole economy sector made up of businesses that had and supplied plug-compatible peripherals was quickly established. More than half of IBM's overall sales were made up of S360-based products and their extensions. Additionally, they made up over half of the global inventory of computers, with a price tag of over $100,000 for each. This achievement put IBM on the right track to rule the computer sector for the next 20 years. Chapter 3. Factors to IBM's success. During the 1950s, 1960s, and 1970s, IBM enjoyed considerable success. And there were a bunch of factors that contributed to this success. First, a committed and effective sales force was present at the company. This allowed them to boost sales and generate substantial profits from their mainframe computers. Secondly, by providing superior customer service, IBM gained customer loyalty. The West turned to IBM when it required computing for defense-related purposes. In World War II, IBM gave the Allies tools to set up their economies for the war. Also, during the Cold War, it carried out a national air defense system, doing intelligence work and helping make space travel possible. IBM also had a very long history of dealing with Russian counterintelligence operations. The business had sufficient capital, allowing it to provide top-notch services. For instance, it was able to invest $32 billion in building new factories to make low-cost computers. Last but not least, IBM had an excellent brand image. It had a solid reputation as a brand that stands for dependability and quality. Chapter 4. Decline of IBM. IBM achieved extraordinary success for nearly 100 years, but it also encountered an unprecedented decline in business, beginning in the 80s. The beginning of IBM's catastrophe was marked by how they handled the intense competition in their field. They weren't prepared for what should have been an easy win for IBM. Numerous businesses were competing for customers in the growing market for personal computers, including Apple, Epson, Commodore, and others. Yes, their first IBM PC, released in 1981, was impressive. It marked the transition of computers being used mainly by the government and the military, to the general populace. Being their first desktop microcomputer, it had 16 kilobytes of RAM, a 16-bit CPU, and 2 floppy drives. Even though we can't consider it a commercial failure, the company miscalculated how much demand would be for its products. As a result, much cheaper copies of its machine stepped in to fill the gap. Since there was more competition and the prices dropped, IBM soon was no longer the one controlling the market. With no previous experience selling to everyday customers, they were responding to the changes and appeared to be a step or two behind. The high quality of IBM stuff came at a higher cost. IBM's computers were pricey compared to their rivals, and thus profits became meager. This factor contributed to IBM's PC market share declining from an impressive 80% at the beginning of the 80s to a disappointing 20% by 1992. The kind of partners IBM worked with early on, like the startup software company Microsoft, gave them a significant advantage. Microsoft provided the operating system, MS-DOS, for IBM's first computers. But, the two parties struggled to reach an agreement when it came time to create a new operating system. IBM insisted on new software rather than sticking with Microsoft, so they continued their system development independently. The company would eventually incur losses of up to $125 million annually. As time went on, Microsoft permitted other businesses to use its Windows operating system, which helped the company become one of the biggest in the world. The deterioration of IBM's relationship with Microsoft is considered one of the worst business decisions ever made. By 1993, they were utterly outmatched and continually falling behind. Clearly, a significant change would need to be made if the business was to survive. In 2005, they finally decided to sell their PC business to the Chinese company Lenovo for about $2.3 billion. That marked the end of IBM's foray into consumer products. And while IBM had gotten destroyed in the consumer PC market, its commercial business was still doing all right. So, they decided to double down on commercial customers, which led them to new offspring, servers, databases, and of course, cloud computing. Soon, IBM started turning things around, and the company was resurrected. But, it wasn't all bursts of sunshine and rainbows for them because their complete freedom within the cloud market didn't last all that long. Since then, every company under the sun has jumped onto the market, whether it be Apple, Google, Dell, Oracle, or Microsoft. They all want a piece of the pie, leading to IBM shedding much of its original cloud gains. IBM is not in its best condition today. Still, it managed to survive its challenges because of its enormous initial success and solid ability to adapt to its customers' challenging and changing needs. In the past 10 years, its revenue has nearly halved from over $100 billion to barely $60 billion. Yet, the company is far from an end. Investors still give IBM a good amount of credit as they've maintained a PE ratio of over 100. IBM, along with Microsoft, is in the lead of the service sector and software. Chapter 5. Lessons to learn from the rise and fall of IBM. IBM will forever remain recognized for its contribution to the tech industry and the world. Even though it didn't always thrive through the years, it survived and reinvented itself. Going through its story, we can all see the importance of adaptability for any company in the technology sector. IBM remains a household name, vitally essential, but not as influential as it used to be. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more content like this.